You think composure is a personality trait. You think some people are just naturally calm, naturally unbothered, naturally immune to the chaos that destroys everyone else around them. You're wrong. Composure is a weapon. And the people who carry it know exactly what they're doing. The moment you react, you lose. Not sometimes. Not in most cases. Every single time. The second your face changes, your voice rises, your fingers type that response before your brain catches up, you have handed your power to someone else. You have told them exactly where you live. And they will go back to that address again and again and again. You are being controlled. Right now. Today. In your relationships, in your workplace, in your social circles. People are pulling strings you cannot see because you don't even know the strings exist. They say something calculated. You respond emotionally. They stay neutral. You escalate. And then, this is the part that should disturb you, they walk away looking like the reasonable one. This is not an accident. Once you see this dynamic, you cannot unsee it. Once you understand what reaction actually signals in the psychological war of human interaction, you will never respond the same way again. What you are about to absorb is not motivation. It is not a pep talk. It is a complete rewiring of how you understand power, silence, and emotional sovereignty. Stay with me. Most people spend their entire lives as open books. Every emotion visible. Every wound accessible. Every trigger mapped and exploitable. They think honesty and transparency are virtues. And maybe in a perfect world, they are. But you do not live in a perfect world. You live in a world where people study you, consciously and unconsciously, looking for the cracks. And the moment they find one, the moment they learn that a certain comment makes you defensive, that a certain type of silence makes you anxious, that a certain tone makes you spiral, they own a piece of you. Weak people react because they have no other option. Reaction is the response of someone with no internal fortress. No center of gravity. They are completely dependent on external events to determine their internal state. Something happens, and they move. Someone speaks, and they answer. Someone ignores them, and they collapse. Their emotional world is entirely at the mercy of what occurs outside of them. This is not passion. This is not authenticity. This is slavery. Invisible, socially acceptable slavery. Powerful people understand something most will never grasp in their lifetime. Your response is always a choice. Always. Even in the most charged moment, there is a fraction of a second between stimulus and response. That gap, that tiny, almost imperceptible space, is where all power lives. Most people never find it because they've never been taught to look. They've been conditioned to believe that feelings must be expressed, that silence means weakness, that not reacting means you don't care. These are lies. These are the lies that keep ordinary people ordinary. Write this down. 500 years ago, Machiavelli observed that the man who controls his emotions controls the room. The prince who could remain unmoved while others panicked was the prince who survived. This was not cruelty. This was architecture. The deliberate construction of a self that could not be dismantled by circumstance. The Stoics built an entire philosophy around this truth. Nothing outside you has power over you unless you grant it. Marcus Aurelius led an empire, fought wars, buried children, faced betrayal, and his private journal, never written for an audience, reveals a man in constant conversation with his own composure. Not because life didn't hurt him, but because he understood that the moment you let the external world dictate your internal state, you have already surrendered the war. History has never rewarded the loudest man in the room. History rewards the one who spoke last, moved deliberately, and gave nothing away until the moment he chose to. Here is what this video will do to you. By the time you finish, you will understand why reaction is a confession. You will understand the specific psychological mechanics that powerful people use to remain untouchable. You will be able to walk into any room, any conversation, any ambush, and feel the pull to react, recognize it for what it is, and choose differently. You will become impossible to manipulate because you will see manipulation the moment it surfaces. You will understand silence not as emptiness but as force. You will never see people the same way again. The version of you that gets baited, that gets defensive, that types the response before thinking, that version will become a stranger to you. After this, you cannot go back. Number 1. Reaction reveals your architecture. When you react, you are not expressing yourself. You are exposing yourself. There is a critical difference. Expression is chosen. Exposure is involuntary. Every time you react emotionally to a provocation, you are giving the other person a detailed map of your psychological interior. You are showing them your insecurities, your fears, your ego wounds, your fragile places. And people remember. They file it away. Consciously or not, they catalogue every place you flinched, every moment you escalated, every time a particular word or tone cracked your composure. Think about the last time someone provoked you. Really think about it. What did you do? You defended yourself. You explained yourself. You justified. You attacked back. And in doing all of that, what did you actually communicate? Not strength. You communicated that their words had weight. That their opinion could enter your fortress without an invitation. That they had the power to disrupt your internal state simply by choosing a particular sequence of words. The powerful person hears the same provocation and does something that looks almost inhuman from the outside. They go still. Not because they don't feel it. They feel everything. But they understand that what you feel and what you show are two entirely separate decisions. And they have made that decision in advance. Power reframe. The person who reacts has already conceded. You don't win by having the better argument in the heat of the moment. You win by refusing to play the game on their terms. Comment. I am unreadable. Number 2. Silence is not absence. Silence is pressure. Most people fear silence. Especially in conflict. When someone attacks you, accuses you, insults you, and you say nothing, they expect you to break. They are waiting for you to fill the silence with explanation, with apology, with justification. The average person will say almost anything to escape the discomfort of an unresolved moment. And this is exactly where they lose. Silence applied correctly is not passivity. It is one of the most aggressive tools in the strategic arsenal. When you refuse to react, you force the other person to exist inside the tension they created. You become a mirror. They throw emotion at you and watch it reflect back. They escalate and find nothing to push against. This creates a specific kind of psychological destabilization in someone who expected a reaction. They start to question themselves. They start to wonder if their provocation was even effective. They start to fill the silence with their own anxiety. You've seen this. You've been in a situation where someone gave you the silent treatment and you felt the insanity of it. The endless spiral. The questioning of your own behavior. That was not weakness in them. That was weapon deployment. The problem was it was used manipulatively, which is why it felt toxic. But understand the underlying mechanism. Silence transferred all of the psychological discomfort onto you. Use it consciously. Use it honestly. Not to punish, but to refuse engagement on unfavorable terrain. The weak man speaks because silence terrifies him. The powerful man understands that the one who speaks first under pressure has already told you everything about their internal state. Burn this into your mind. Your silence is your statement. Number 3. Emotional reaction is a signal of unresolved identity. Here is the psychological truth that will sting if you let it land properly. The topics that make you react most intensely are not random. They are maps to your unresolved material. The insults that penetrate, the criticisms that make you defensive, the comparisons that make your jaw tighten, they land because somewhere in your psychology, you have not yet settled those questions about yourself. If someone calls you incompetent and you genuinely know your capability with the certainty of lived experience, the insult slides off. It makes no contact. But if there is a small, quiet voice somewhere inside you that wonders if maybe they're right, the reaction comes fast and hot. You are not reacting to them. You are reacting to the part of yourself that is still unsettled. This is why powerful people do the internal work. Not therapy in the soft, feelings-focused sense, though that has its place. but the brutal, honest audit of your own unresolved wounds. Because every unresolved wound is a lever that other people can pull. Every insecurity you haven't faced is a weapon someone else can use against you. The most untouchable people are not people who feel less. They are people who have faced their own interior so completely that there is almost nothing left to weaponize. Most people run from this. They medicate, they distract, they surround themselves with people who affirm them and avoid people who challenge them. And because they've never done the excavation, they remain perpetually vulnerable to anyone willing to name what they've refused to see. Do the work no one sees. It produces the composure everyone eventually notices. Say it with me, I know what I am. Number 4, the person who stays calm owns the frame. Every interaction has a frame. A frame is the invisible structure that determines what the interaction means, who is in control, and what the rules are. Most people enter conversations and accept whatever frame is handed to them without realizing it happening. Someone comes at you with accusation and aggression, and immediately you are playing defense in their frame. You are responding to their terms, their energy, their choreography. The moment you react emotionally, you have accepted their frame as real. You have agreed, through your behavior, that this situation is one that warrants the emotional response you're displaying. You have co-signed their reality. The powerful person does something different. They bring their own frame, or they simply don't engage with the one being offered. They slow the tempo. They ask questions rather than defending. They let silence do the reframing. They respond on their timeline, not in the urgency created by someone else's emotional state. And in doing so, they become the axis around which the interaction rotates. Not through aggression. Through density. Through a gravitational stillness that other people cannot help but orient themselves toward. Watch the people who never seem rattled in high-stakes situations. They are not suppressing emotion and barely holding it together. They have built something that most people never build, a self-concept so established, so internally verified, that it does not require constant external validation to remain stable. They don't need you to agree with them. They don't need the room to approve. They have already decided who they are, and they are simply moving through the world in accordance with that decision. This is what untouchable actually means. Not invulnerable. Not emotionless. Decided. If this is restructuring how you see power, subscribe. You need more of this. Number 5. Reactivity destroys long-term strategy. This is where it becomes genuinely costly. Beyond the interpersonal dynamic, beyond the social power exchange, reactivity is tactically catastrophic in the long game. Every significant life objective, the business you're building, the position you're working toward, the relationships you want to sustain, the reputation you're constructing, all of it requires the ability to absorb short-term discomfort in service of long-term direction. The reactive person is always being pulled sideways. Someone disrespects them, and they respond immediately and burn a bridge they needed. Someone challenges their idea, and they defend it reflexively instead of evaluating the challenge honestly and possibly improving. They get bad news and they make decisions from the emotional state of the bad news rather than waiting for clarity. They are consistently making long-term decisions with short-term emotional data. Every great operator in history, military, corporate, political, understood that the game is won or lost in the capacity to hold your position under pressure. To continue executing the plan when the environment is hostile. To not deviate from strategy because of a moment's provocation. The average person sacrifices their future repeatedly to satisfy their immediate emotional need for expression. They send the message they shouldn't send. They make the decision they're not ready to make. They say the thing in the meeting that felt good for exactly 4 seconds and then became a liability for 4 months. They chose the relief of expression over the power of restraint. Restraint is not suppression. Restraint is the decision that your long-term position is more valuable than your short-term emotional satisfaction. It is the most mature, most strategic, most powerful decision a person can make in a heated moment. The man who controls his timing controls his outcomes. Number 6. They want you to react. Understand that completely. This is not paranoia. This is mechanics. Some provocations are unconscious. People are reactive themselves, and their chaos bleeds outward and invites yours. But many provocations, the subtle dismissal in a meeting, the backhanded compliment, the strategic exclusion, the pointed comment delivered just quietly enough to maintain plausible deniability, these are deliberate. These are tests. These are calibration tools. People use them to measure you, to find out how stable you are, to see if you can be rattled, to discover whether you're someone they need to take seriously or someone they can manage. When you react, you fail the test. You tell them everything. You tell them your stability is conditional, that it depends on their behavior, that you can be moved, that you can be destabilized with the right combination of words. And once someone knows that about you, they never unknow it. When you don't react, when you receive the provocation, let it land, and respond from a place of complete stillness, you pass the test in a way that is deeply unsettling to anyone who is trying to find your flaw. Because they didn't find it. They walked in looking for the walls of your fortress and found nothing but open sky and silence. And that is terrifying to someone who relies on predictability and reactivity to maintain their social leverage. They want you reactive. Keep that in your chest at all times. Comment: I don't react. I decide. Number 7. Mastering the gap is mastering yourself. Between stimulus and response, there is a gap. You've heard this before, probably, in some form. But let it land differently this time. That gap is not theoretical. It is a physical reality in your nervous system. The stimulus arrives. There is a brief, measurable period before your conditioned response fires. That period is where all human freedom lives. Most people have spent years, decades, contracting that gap until it barely exists, conditioning themselves through repeated reactive behavior to respond faster and faster, with less and less evaluation. Someone does the thing, and they're already in the reaction before they've made any conscious choice. They've practiced reactivity so thoroughly that it has become automatic. An identity. They call it passion. They call it honesty. They call it just being who I am. It is none of those things. It is conditioning. You can recondition. Every single time you catch yourself in the gap, every moment where you feel the pull to react and you pause, even for a second, even briefly, you are expanding that gap. You are building the muscle. You are constructing, rep by rep, the capacity to be moved without being swept away, to feel without performing, to be present without being consumed. This is the work. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Incredibly unglamorous. But cumulative in a way that will compound over years into a version of yourself that other people will not know how to handle, because they will not be able to predict you, manipulate you, or destabilize you on demand. Write this down. The gap is where you live or where you are lived. Now we arrive at the point in this where information becomes insufficient. Because you can absorb everything said here. You can nod along. You can feel the truth of it resonating somewhere in your chest. And then you can leave this video and react within the hour to the first thing that goes sideways, and nothing will have changed. Information is not transformation. You already knew, on some level, that reacting to every provocation was costing you. You already suspected that the most composed people in the room held something the loudest people did not. You knew. Knowing is not enough. What has to happen now is execution. And before execution can happen, something has to die. The version of you that has been reacting for years, that person has an identity built around it. They have a story about themselves. I am passionate. I am authentic. I do not let people walk on me. I speak my mind. I tell it like it is. These narratives feel like dignity. They are not. They are the stories weak men tell to make reactivity feel like a virtue. That version of you has to die. Not metaphorically. Not gradually. It has to be executed. You stop asking the world to be different before you become different. You stop waiting for people to stop provoking you before you develop the capacity not to be provoked. You stop expecting circumstances to become favorable before you build the interior that functions independent of circumstances. The old contract, I will be calm when the world is calm, I will be composed when people treat me well, I will not react when no one gives me reason to. That contract is finished. It was always a losing contract. Because the world will not reorganize itself around your nervous system. People will continue to be people. Provocations will continue to arrive. Chaos will continue to be the baseline condition of human interaction. You are the variable. You are the only variable you have ever controlled. That version of you that needs validation to feel stable, execute it. That version that sends the message in the heat of the moment, execute it. That version that defends itself against every challenge, every slight, every social friction, execute it. You are not executing passion. You are not executing realness. You are executing the part of you that was built by people and circumstances that no longer deserve authority over who you are becoming. Shed it. This is not the death of feeling. It is the death of feeling as performance. It is the death of emotion as involuntary spectacle. What remains is not coldness. What remains is not distance. What remains is something that most people will never experience: total internal sovereignty. The knowledge, not the belief, the knowledge that what happens outside you does not determine what happens inside you, unless you decide it does. That is not a small thing. That is the whole thing. You are not building better reactions. You are building a person who has outgrown reaction as a primary mode of engagement with the world. Someone who responds by choice, from a chosen state, at a chosen time, in a chosen manner. Who cannot be baited because they are not hungry. Who cannot be destabilized because they have built something that does not destabilize. This is who you are becoming. Not who you will become someday, when circumstances improve, when the people around you evolve, when life becomes less difficult. Now. In the difficulty. In the provocation. In the silence after you have chosen not to react and felt the pressure of that choice and held it anyway. That is where the new version of you is forged. Not in comfort. In the heat of the moment you chose to walk through without burning. You are not the person who reacts anymore. You are the person the room cannot read. You are the stillness that makes other people feel their own noise. You move when you choose to move. You speak when you choose to speak. You reveal nothing until revelation serves your purpose. Comment: I am the calm they cannot explain. You don't go back. You don't explain this to anyone. You don't announce the change. You simply become it. And they will feel it, in the way a room changes temperature when someone who has built something real walks into it. Power is not performed. It is inhabited. Now inhabit it.